Before we begin, listen carefully. What if I told you that one of the greatest saints in history did not encounter God only through peace and light, but through terror, screams, and creatures so horrifying that she struggled to describe them with human words? What if I told you that demons did not fear fasting, pain, or suffering, but ran in terror from something far simpler, something you might already possess? And what if I told you that everything she wrote was investigated by the Inquisition and still approved? Welcome to one of the darkest, most misunderstood spiritual battles ever recorded. Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel, click the notification bell, and comment below where you're watching from. I want to know how far these stories are reaching and how many of you are brave enough to stay until the end. Now, let us begin. Saint Teresa of Avila was born in 1515 in Spain, during a time when the church was powerful, strict, and unforgiving. She was not born in a monastery. She was not born holy. She was born human, imaginative, emotional, and deeply curious about the unseen world. As a child, Teresa was fascinated by stories of martyrs. She once tried to run away from home with her brother so they could die for Christ and go straight to heaven. They were stopped before leaving town, but something inside her had already awakened, a hunger for the eternal, even if it meant death. But holiness did not come easily. As a young woman, Teresa loved attention. She enjoyed friendships, conversations, admiration. Later in her own writings, she would admit something shocking. She entered the convent not out of perfect love for God, but out of fear of hell. And that fear would soon become very real. Life in the convent was not peaceful. Teresa became gravely ill. At one point, she was believed to be dead. Her body was laid out for burial. A grave was prepared, but suddenly she revived. From that moment on, everything changed. She suffered years of physical pain, paralysis, heart problems, constant weakness. But worse than the pain was what began happening during prayer. At first, it was subtle. A sudden chill, a sense of being watched, a pressure in the room, as if the air itself had grown heavy. Then the visions began. Teresa described demons not as red cartoon figures, but as grotesque, twisted beings, misshapen, mocking, and filled with hatred. She wrote that they appeared suddenly during prayer, distorting the atmosphere, filling her soul with dread. These were not dreams. She was awake, fully conscious, kneeling, praying, and suddenly they were there. She said their presence carried a horror so intense that no human fear could compare to it. The terror did not come only from their appearance, but from what they communicated without words: contempt, rage, and mockery toward God and the soul. They did not always attack physically. Sometimes they whispered, sometimes they laughed, sometimes they pretended to be angels. And that was the most dangerous part. Teresa warned that demons are masters of deception. She said they could imitate light, sweetness, even spiritual joy. But beneath it all, there was always pride, confusion, and disturbance. She once wrote that true divine encounters leave the soul humble and peaceful, while demonic ones inflate the ego or leave fear behind. But knowing this did not stop the attacks. They intensified. One night, while praying alone in her cell, Teresa suddenly sensed a violent presence beside her. She later described it as a foul, shadowy creature, grotesque beyond description. Her body froze, her heart raced. The room felt suffocating. But instead of screaming or running, she reached for what she had nearby: holy water. With shaking hands, she threw it toward the presence, and what happened next shocked even her. The demon fled, not slowly, not calmly. It vanished in terror, as if burned. Later, Teresa would write something extraordinary. From long experience, I understand that there is nothing the devils flee from more without returning than holy water. But she added something even more disturbing. She said holy water alone was not enough. There was something demons feared more than physical penance, more than fasting, more than self-punishment. And that thing was humility. Teresa wrote that demons laugh at pride, even religious pride. They are not intimidated by suffering if it feeds the ego. They do not fear dramatic acts meant to impress others. But humility, true humility, terrifies them. Why? Because humility reflects truth, and demons cannot stand truth. They flee not because of pain, but because they are exposed. This insight did not come from theory. It came from battle. As Teresa's mystical experiences grew stronger, so did suspicion around her. People whispered. Some claimed she was possessed. Others said she was delusional. In an era where women were rarely trusted as theologians, her writings drew attention from the Spanish Inquisition. Every vision, every description, every word was examined, interrogated, tested. This was dangerous. Many others were condemned for far less. But after years of investigation, something remarkable happened. Her writings were approved. Not because they were dramatic, but because they were consistent, orthodox, and spiritually sound. The Church concluded that her encounters were not demonic deceptions, but authentic spiritual experiences filtered through suffering. Yet approval did not mean peace. The demons did not stop. They only became more furious. Teresa wrote that as her union with God deepened, the attacks became more violent, more terrifying, more relentless. She was mocked during prayer, distracted, assaulted with images meant to disturb her purity and faith. And through it all, she learned something terrifyingly simple. Demons do not waste time on souls that do not threaten them. They attack those who are moving closer to God. And Teresa of Avila was moving very fast. Teresa wrote that one day, during deep prayer, God allowed her to see where a soul goes when it completely rejects Him. She did not want to see it. She did not ask for it. But suddenly, everything changed. The room disappeared. The walls vanished. And she found herself falling, not gently, not slowly, but violently, as if dragged downward. She said the first thing she felt was absolute confinement. Not fire yet, not screams, but a crushing sensation, as if her soul was compressed into a space smaller than her own body. She described it as being jammed inside a furnace, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to scream. Then came the fire. But this was not ordinary fire. She wrote that earthly fire brings light. This fire brought darkness. A fire that burns without illuminating. A fire that tortures without revealing. A fire that penetrates the soul, not the flesh. Teresa said the pain was beyond description, but worse than pain was something else, hopelessness. In that place, she understood instantly that there was no end. No relief, no distraction, no time, only eternity. She said, "The pain is such that I cannot describe it, nor exaggerate it." And then she saw the others. She saw souls. Not bodies as we know them, but conscious beings in agony, fully aware, fully awake, fully suffering. No one comforted anyone. No one helped anyone, because every soul was completely alone. She understood something terrifying. In hell, there is no love, not even the memory of it. Only regret and clarity, perfect clarity. Then she realized something that shook her deeply. She knew without being told exactly which place was prepared for her. She said it was as if hell itself was saying, "This is where you would have gone." Not because she was evil, not because she committed great crimes, but because of lukewarmness, because of delays, because of loving God but not fully, because of choosing comfort over surrender. This realization crushed her. And then, just as suddenly, she was pulled out. She woke up, alive, breathing, shaking, so shaken that for days she could barely speak. She said no words could fully express what she saw, but she wrote anyway, not to terrify, but to warn. From that day on, Teresa was no longer the same person. She lost fear of suffering. She lost attachment to comfort. She lost interest in admiration. Because once you've seen hell even for a moment, everything else becomes small. She wrote that all the sufferings of life are nothing compared to even 1 second in that place. And here is the terrifying part. She said hell was not filled with monsters attacking souls. It was filled with souls realizing too late. After this vision, the demonic attacks increased. The demons were enraged. They mocked her. They tried to convince her that the vision was fake, that it was madness, that she was arrogant to believe God would show her such things. They whispered during prayer. They disrupted her concentration. They filled her imagination with disturbing images. But Teresa had changed. She no longer argued with them. She ignored them. She humbled herself, and they hated that. Teresa wrote something chilling. She said demons cannot endure humility because humility removes their power. They thrive on fear. They thrive on confusion. They thrive on pride. But humility, true humility, starves them. She said when she humbled herself completely before God, the demons lost their grip, even if they continued to appear. And this is important. She said demons appear terrifying, but they are cowards when faced with souls rooted in truth. Her writings spread, and with them came scrutiny. Priests examined her. Theologians questioned her. Authorities doubted her. And eventually, the Inquisition stepped in. Every vision, every description of hell, every encounter with demons was tested against doctrine. And Teresa, fragile, sick, and female in a male-dominated church, stood firm. She did not exaggerate. She did not dramatize. She did not soften the truth. And because of that, her writings survived. But approval did not bring safety. The demons became more aggressive. After her vision of hell, Teresa expected peace. She expected clarity. She expected consolation. But what she received was silence. God, who once spoke gently to her soul, fell silent. Prayer became dry. Meditation became painful. Heaven felt closed. And hell felt close. Teresa wrote that during this period, demons no longer appeared only as grotesque creatures. They became voices, persistent, mocking, accusing. They whispered thoughts she never wanted to have. You imagined everything. You are deceived. God never spoke to you. You are wasting your life. Everyone thinks you are a fraud. These voices did not shout. They whispered softly, like thoughts that felt like her own, and that terrified her. She began to doubt everything, her visions, her calling, her sanity. She feared that what she believed were divine encounters were actually demonic illusions. This fear cut deeper than any physical pain, because if it was all deception, then she had built her life on a lie. The demons attacked her most during prayer. She wrote that every time she tried to focus, her mind was flooded with disturbing images, blasphemous thoughts, and sudden waves of despair. She did not choose these thoughts, they invaded her. And the worst part? She felt no consolation from God to counter them. Just silence. Teresa described this period as one of the darkest nights of her soul. She prayed, she begged, she wept, but heaven did not respond. She felt like a child crying in the dark, with no parent answering. And the demons noticed. They intensified. At times she sensed their presence physically, a pressure on her chest, a suffocating weight, a feeling of being surrounded. She wrote that she sometimes felt pushed, shaken, or suddenly overwhelmed by fear without any visible cause. She did not dramatize these events. She recorded them quietly, almost reluctantly, because she was afraid of being misunderstood. What made this even worse was human judgment. Some confessors doubted her. Some advised her to stop praying deeply. Others warned her that visions were dangerous for women. She was told to suppress her experiences, to stay silent, to obey, and she did, even when it hurt. Teresa feared that obedience itself was killing her soul, but she obeyed anyway. This is where humility reached its deepest level. She surrendered not only her will, but her reputation, her understanding, her need to be validated. And demons hated this. She wrote something chilling. The demons became angrier when she stopped reacting to them. They wanted fear. They wanted despair. They wanted resistance. But when she humbled herself completely, when she said, "Even if I am deceived, I will obey God and His church," their power weakened. They still appeared, but they could not dominate her soul. During one particularly dark night, Teresa believed she was completely abandoned by God. No presence, no warmth, no inner light, just emptiness. And yet she stayed. She did not leave prayer. She did not abandon her vocation. She stayed in the darkness, and that was her victory. She later wrote that true faith is proven when God feels absent. Anyone can believe when they feel comfort, but faith that remains in silence terrifies demons because it is pure, not emotional, not self-serving, just trust. Eventually, the silence broke, not suddenly, not dramatically, but gently, like dawn. God's presence returned not with visions, but with strength. Teresa realized that the darkness was not punishment, it was purification. The demons were allowed to attack, but only to a limit. They could frighten, they could confuse, but they could not destroy. From this suffering, Teresa emerged transformed. She was no longer seeking experiences, she was seeking truth. She began reforming the Carmelite order, calling for simplicity, humility, and deep prayer. And this enraged hell, because now Teresa was not just a soul seeking God, she was a threat. After surviving silence, doubt, demonic harassment, and inner darkness, Teresa of Avila emerged changed. She was no longer seeking visions. She was no longer afraid of demons. She was no longer shaken by accusations. She had learned something terrifyingly simple. Hell has limits, God does not. And that realization marked the beginning of the demon's defeat. Teresa wrote that when she finally stopped focusing on the attacks, when she stopped analyzing, questioning, or fearing them, the demons lost their power. They still appeared. But now they appeared desperate, mocking less, threatening more. Because desperation is the sign of a losing enemy. She described occasions when demons appeared during prayer, grotesque and furious, but unable to approach her. She said it felt as if there was an invisible boundary they could not cross, not because she was strong, but because she was empty of herself. Humility had hollowed her out, and demons cannot cling to emptiness. One of the most chilling things Teresa ever wrote was this. She said demons do not fear suffering, but they panic when a soul no longer cares about being seen, praised, or understood. Why? Because pride is their entry point, and Teresa had closed the door completely. It was during this period that she intensified the reform of the Carmelite order. She called for poverty, silence, small communities, deep prayer, no comfort, no status, no distractions. This reform was resisted violently, not only by demons, but by people. She was accused, opposed, mocked, threatened, at times isolated. She was called dangerous, unstable, too intense, too mystical, too radical. But Teresa did not retreat, and hell noticed. She wrote that the demonic attacks returned one last time, fiercer but shorter. Sudden terror during prayer, violent inner disturbances, moments where despair tried to resurface. But now, something was different. She no longer fought them, she ignored them. She humbled herself. She laughed at their threats, not with arrogance, but with peace, and they could not endure it. Teresa said that when she sprinkled holy water during these attacks, the demons fled immediately. But she added something important. Holy water works not because of the water itself, but because of obedience, faith, and humility behind it. Without those, rituals are empty. With those, hell trembles. Near the end of her life, Teresa experienced fewer visions, not because God left her, but because she no longer needed them. Her faith was no longer fueled by experiences. It was anchored in surrender. She wrote that the soul that is truly united with God no longer fears demons, suffering, or death, because it no longer belongs to itself. In 1582, Teresa of Avila died quietly. No dramatic battle, no final vision of hell, just peace. But hell had not won. In fact, hell had failed. After her death, her writings were preserved, studied, and scrutinized, again, by theologians, by scholars, by church authorities, and once more they were approved, not as fantasy, not as hysteria, but as profound spiritual theology born from suffering. She was later declared Doctor of the Church, one of the highest honors possible. A woman, once doubted, once accused, once attacked by demons, now recognized as a teacher of souls. Teresa left behind a final warning, quiet but terrifying. She said demons are real, hell is real, but their power is limited. What they fear most is not pain, not fasting, not discipline, but humility that refuses to serve pride. And here is the final truth of her story. Saint Teresa of Avila did not defeat demons by being extraordinary. She defeated them by becoming nothing. And in that nothingness, God was everything.